Welcome to the Especially for Athletes podcast, where we explore essential principles that empower athletes to learn life's most valuable lessons through sports.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Especially for Athletes podcast. I'm Dustin Smith, here with Shad Martin from Especially for Athletes, and our special guest today is Marcus Bleazard. Bleazard. You get called both, right, Marcus? Which one is it?
Yeah, it's Bleazard.
Yeah, I knew it was Bleazard. We knew your dad back in college. Shad and I actually were college teammates with Marcus's dad 26 years ago, and have kind of kept our eye on Marcus, both just because we were friends with your dad and we knew you were his son and kind of watching you, but especially through high school and then as you went on to college. And I might even add to that, especially because of the college you went to. I had a little extra interest because I knew you were going to have a extra unique situation and experience that, you know, very few people understand, being that you are attending school and receiving training at the Naval Academy, not only as a football player and as a student, but also as what would I call you? What would be the right word? Not soldier, because we're not in active battle right now. Is it cadet? What should we refer to you as?
Midshipman.
Midshipman. There it is. Okay.
That's for those guys up north. We don't like those guys.
Yeah, I knew if I said the wrong thing, I was going to tick you off, and I did. Midshipman. I knew that. All right. Awesome. Well, Marcus grew up in Georgia. He was born actually in Utah, not far from Salt Lake City, where his dad grew up in Grantsville, Utah. I moved out to Georgia, I believe, for your dad's work, right?
Yes, sir.
Was that with Swire Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola.
Yeah. And then, so Marcus grew up out in Kennesaw, Georgia, went to Harrison High School, and is now at the Naval Academy playing football. He just finished his junior season. And so there's a lot that we want to get into, Marcus. I want to start by just asking you right out of the gate, what was the biggest thing, the biggest change from high school and sports to being at the Naval Academy? Not just and maybe start with the routine or the what's it like at the Naval Academy? Because my guess is that was probably a little bit of an eye opener for you, because it's different than other colleges.
Yeah, for sure. And the experience at the Naval Academy changes year to year, with the freshman year being the hardest year, obviously. And you have, so you graduate high school and you go to what they call plebe summer, which is basically a kind of a rundown version of boot camp or military camp where, you don't have your phone, you're not allowed to talk. Basically, somebody else is in control of your life for about 2 months. And then from that time in the summer, you go into the academic year where, you go to fall camp for football, and then you go to classes, and then the season starts, and then you have your other military training as well. Freshman year was definitely the most challenging. Just kind of running through the day, you'd wake up around, 6:30. I need to go down to breakfast check by around 7. You got classes starting at 7:45, and then you're in classes basically all day until lunch. Get done lunch, go down and get some lunch, then go over to the football facility for meetings. Most of the time you go back for a class in the afternoon, class or two, and then head back over to the training facility to get tapes, get ready for practice, and then have some more meetings. Then practice comes around, you practice for a couple hours, and you get done eating, get done with practice, and get back to your room around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And then you start homework from there. Go to bed, sign the tap sheet, sign the attendance sheet that you're at the Naval Academy, and then go to sleep, wake up the next morning, do it again.
What's the tap sheet? You sign that? That's not something that you would do at normal schools. What's that all about?
No, so it's we have different liberty policies where when you're allowed to leave the campus, when you're allowed to stay. And so the liberty policy is during the week, nobody's really allowed to leave unless you have special privileges. So you're supposed to be on campus, throughout the whole week until the weekend, and then make you sign a sheet saying that, hey, I'm not going to leave. I'm checking in for the night. I'm here to stay, type of deal.
Wow, that's that would be a huge change of scenery for a freshman.
And especially I don't come from a military family, so the military aspect of it, wearing the uniform. They make us take tests our freshman year and even sophomore and junior year about military knowledge. And so that stuff is completely brand new, and I'm trying to learn it all. And it's a big shock coming in as a freshman.
Hmm. That's military knowledge. Would that be, is that more historical? Like, I mean, understanding, history of battles and things, or is that more current military strategy and things?
I think it's a little bit of both. You definitely have like the history of certain things, and me and Shao were talking a little about the Marine Corps, so you'd know like, oh, the Marines started, back when, and how they kind of formed. But yeah, you also learn a lot about what's going on now, what kind of operations and those types of things that they're responsible for doing. It's it's something I'll definitely specialize on a little bit later on once I finish up here, but it's a little bit of an introduction.
Yeah. And then you
So you
studied.
mentioned the summer.
Yeah.
You called it plea summer. Is that what it was called?
Plebe.
Plebe.
That is that where you can't talk to anybody and you didn't have your phone? Is that this is that
Yep, it's basically like a miniature boot camp. So
Okay. Yeah. So you're just like crazy working out, like tell us, for those who don't know, like us, what that is. So you graduate high school end of May,
mhm.
June. And then when do you report to plebe summer? And then what do you do there until you report to school?
Yeah, so I graduated end of May, and then the end of June you go into the plebe summer. So I had about a month off. Um, yeah, plebe summer is definitely a unique experience. It's something that everybody at the Naval Academy goes through, which is a really cool bonding thing as well. As much as it sucks, it's a cool bonding experience. But yeah, you work out first thing in the morning. You have no sense of time. So there's no watches. Nobody has access to any sort of time. So they wake you up in the middle of the night, and then you go work out, and then you do physical exercises, other sort of military stuff, and then yeah, it's basic training.
Okay.
and how did you do? How did you handle that?
Man, I survived. I was so there's a little bit of a mix here at the Naval Academy. They have a preparatory school where kids who are working to get the grades to come to the Naval Academy. And so they mix us all together. You have the kids who came direct and the kids who went to the prep school, and they come together during plebe summer. And I mean, luckily, I had a roommate who went to that preparatory school, and I was just leaning on him heavy. I was hey, man, what do we do about this? What do we do about that? He taught me how to fold my clothes, how to do the bed. So it was, yeah, it was a survival time for me. It's good.
Do they ever know you're a football player, and does that play into how they treat you at all, either for good or for bad?
Yeah, the football guys definitely stand out a little bit, because we're bigger than everybody else by a lot. Like, it's not very common you see I'm only 6 foot 225, but a bunch of my teammates are 6'3", 250 plus, and there's very few people at the Naval Academy or even in the Navy who are like that. So we stand out. Just depends. There are some people who like varsity athletes here, and some people who think that we get special treatment and don't like us for that. But I never experienced anything bad.
I gotta, before we jump into some athletic, more specific athlete questions, what's the girl situation like, Marcus? I mean, you're 22 years old, right?
Yep.
Yeah, like from 18 to 22, girls are usually a pretty important part of a young man's thought process during the day. How does that work at the Naval Academy?
Yeah. So there are girls at the Naval Academy.
I know, but are there girls you can date at the Naval Academy, Marcus? Come on
No,
now. There's girls.
not. To
There's
be honest,
dateable.
probably not.
Look,
For me, at
Marcus,
least. And there are
you don't
people.
worry about that at all. Dustin and I both have a daughter your age. We'll play rock, paper, scissors. And we'll
Yeah.
just,
Hey, I started first, Shad. Stop cutting me off. I was working up.
I'm cutting you off at the pass, man.
He was trying to beat me to the question, Marcus. I know somebody that you could date back now. It's got to be hard though, right? Because there's more men than women on campus, right? And so I mean, it's hard, right? I assume it's hard, right? I don't want to make fun of anybody or joke about that. That's got to be hard, right?
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, especially, as a member of the church, we live by by different standards, and it's hard sometimes to find even friends really who are living by those same standards. So, no, but it's good. I'm still working on the girl part, but I've got a good group of friends here at the academy.
Cool.
Can I ask a question, Dustin, before we jump in? Because it's unique, I think. You went your first year to the Naval Academy right out of high school, and then you took a 2-year break to go on your LDS mission. Do I have that correctly? You went after your freshman year?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I had heard sometimes that's not even possible. So I'm glad to hear that that is possible. But we ask this a lot. A lot of the people who listen to this podcast are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who choose to forego their career for a little while, their football career and college, to go on a mission. What difference has that made in your life, and how's that helped you in football and in the Naval Academy as you've returned?
Yeah, going in. So I was recruited by Coach Ken Niamatalolo, who was here when I was a freshman. And so I kind of told him, he's also a member of the Church Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. And I told him coming in, that was what I wanted to do. And I was blessed that he was allowing me to do that. So yeah, I kind of planned on coming out of high school. And I'll tell you what, when I left the Naval Academy and went on my mission, I mean, I was in Guatemala, so it was, a little bit of a rubber situation, but it was relatively easy compared to all the things I went through at Plebe Summer and all the tests and all the time management, all that stuff. It was relatively easy considering that. But in terms of an athletic perspective, I think it just gave me a chance to reset and more than anything, mentally, it helped me to come back with, I guess, mentally refreshed and mentally rejuvenated to be able to put my shoulder to the wheel of football and go all in on that.
So let's talk football and sports now. One of the questions that we dive into a lot, and that when we speak to athletes or teams, we talk about a lot. And I think your generation gets, in some cases, I think it's fair, but I think it's unfair at the same time. We're too hard on you as it relates to kids' mental toughness and resiliency. I say that meaning that I've been a coach for a long, long time, and I've been around athletes in my career, and there is a difference in resiliency in young people now, in my opinion, than 20 years ago. That doesn't mean that they're not resilient. It just it's different. You had to be a heck of resilient to go from Georgia, up to the academy. So just going to a school away from home, first of all, is hard. Then to play sports and go to school is hard. And then to play sports and go to school and also be training to possibly, to be a soldier, to, training as a midshipman, that adds a whole other element to it. What have you learned, or what are your thoughts on that, the importance of being resilient, and how did you learn how to be resilient? Do you have any, examples or lessons you can think about in your life when you were like, you know what, I knew after this that I could do this. I was resilient. I had to dig deeper.
Yeah, I think during my freshman year, especially, was a really, really important time in my life when I realized I could kind of do whatever I wanted to as long as I put my mind to it and worked hard. And one of the ways that I learned that was through my schooling, and especially the mental side of the academy, those military tests that I was talking about, and taking 18 credit hours during the school year, and then also doing football on top of that. And I think that, especially with regard to those military tests, that was something completely new that I had never done. It's one thing with football. I've played football, I've worked out before, but with those military tests, it was something that, man, I had no clue what kind of guns this ship had and where they were shooting and those types of things. And as the semester went on, I slowly figured out that there were certain ways to study for these tests. And I slowly figured out that, the right information to look at within the book to study. And I realized that as the semester went on, my grades continued to increase and to improve to a point where I wasn't unsat or I wasn't failing those quizzes anymore. I was actually doing really well on them. I think that was just a time when I realized that being resilient and continuing to show up and look for a way to progress helped me to build resilience in that way.
What about on the football field? That you just touched on something that coaches say a lot. And you probably said it not knowingly, but that idea of continuing to show up is that's a huge thing right there, right? Just showing up is half the battle in most things in life. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed and getting going. When someone's really struggling with depression or with something, it's just 1 hour at a time, and one project at a time. When you got out there on the football team, as you know, high school football to college football is a huge jump. And a
Yep.
lot of kids don't survive their freshman year. Forget about schooling and the difficulty of living away from home and taking college classes. They just can't survive the practices and the routine of being an athlete, how much more intense the weightlifting is, and the film study, and just how much faster the game is. First time you had to make a tackle at linebacker on a college athlete and get used to that. And I don't know how the coaches are compared to your high school coaches, but was that a difference and something that you had to, dig down, and did you ever doubt yourself?
Yeah, I doubted myself a lot. And to be honest, I feel like that jump from high school to college is a pretty big jump, as you mentioned. And one thing that I guess this past season, so I was going into the fall camp competing for a starting spot and ended up tearing my hamstring going into the second week of practice. And as with what happens with injuries, that they got to find somebody to replace me. And what happened was, they found somebody to replace me on all the special teams, at linebacker while I was recovering, and that was a really really hard time in my life because to be honest, I felt like I did everything within my control to be healthy and stay healthy and avoid injury.
Was that something that you had to dig deep and really check your resiliency, or was that easy for you?
Yeah, I would say physically. And in terms of the game speed, one thing that I've relied a lot on is the success I had in high school, right? And I think that coming into college, I kind of had this attitude where, oh, that's high school ball, that's high school Harry type of stuff, as my coach would say. And I kind of just dismissed it as something that happened in the past. That's, not that important. But I think that one thing I've noticed, especially this season, is that no matter what level of football, I'm playing at, if that's in, the biggest game in South Bend and Notre Dame, or, back in my high school stadium, it's the same size field. It's the same ball. It's the same scheme. It's the same objective to tackle the guy with the ball and to put the ball in the end zone. And I think that drawing on those experiences from the past of knowing that, okay, in the past, I have been a great linebacker. And in the past, I have been able to do that, has just allowed me to continue to make that part of my identity as somebody who does those things at the college level.
That's interesting, Shad. I'm going to get your thoughts on that too. But he just said making that part of his identity is when we're struggling with things, whether that's in sports or just in life. There's a quote that I've shared before with you, Shad, that we are in times of weakness or fatigue. I think it's in times of fatigue that we're haunted by thoughts that we conquered years ago. Right. So old things that we took care of years ago and we got over years ago creep back into our mind. And so, you just said that you knew you could do it, and you knew it was going to be hard, but you'd done it before. So you knew you could do it. Shad, there's something to that in life, right?
I think so. And I think what Marcus is talking about, almost every athlete that makes a leap, and it could be from junior high to high school ball, right? Or it could be high school to college. All of a sudden, every level you go up, everyone was the man, the woman in high school, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this thing where you kind of get this imposter syndrome where you think I'm the only one here that really doesn't belong. Somehow I fooled people into having these opportunities. And as we've talked to a lot of athletes on here, Dustin and Marcus, it's that inner talk and paying attention to the way you talk to yourself and what you say to yourself seems so important to elite athletes. And if your constant inner talk is, I don't belong, I don't belong, I don't belong, then eventually it's self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't think you are going to belong. But if we're intentional about how we talk to ourselves, and I think that's where drawing on the past is super helpful, right? No, I know I belong. Like, I didn't fool anybody. I earned my spot here. I got here, and now I just need to perform, and I just need to be my best self, and I just need to be resilient when I fail. I just need to come back from injury when that happens, and I belong here. I think that that's something that we should say over and over again in our head, and it's something important to think about and pay attention to. I wonder how many athletes, even subconsciously, realize that if they concentrate on it, they'll realize subconsciously they talk so badly about themselves to themselves. No one hears it, but it's all up here. And if we could switch that and know I belong, I could do this, I could keep going, whatever that positive self-talk is, it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Marcus, you guys talk a lot about, I mean, I'm guessing you have some training or I hope you do something to how to handle the mental side of just how difficult it is to be doing what you're doing. Do you get training in that, or is that something that you just have to kind of figure out on the fly?
I would say that we don't really have an official training. We have a sports psychologist who comes and speaks to us and definitely gives us some good pointers. But I think our coaching staff does a great job of helping us with that. Before every film session we have a little thought of the day where we talk about, specific points that will help us improve our mental game. And I also think our strength coach especially has done a great job in teaching us about how to attack challenges in the weight room and attack challenges in life. Like, sometimes he says that going along with the way you talk to yourself, he just tells us a lot of the time that sometimes we don't need to listen to ourselves so much, but we need to talk to ourselves more. We need to tell ourselves, that what we need to do and the person we want to be. So,
yeah.
Can I ask a question here, Dustin? I'm always interested, Marcus, in the inner talk of an athlete, and I want to get specific. I know we've been talking about that, but man, you went through that schedule. Wake up at 6 or 6:30. You go eat. 45 minutes later, you're in class, and then you're eating lunch, and then you're in meetings, and then you're in practice or an afternoon class, then practice, and then back to study. I'm sure there's plenty of times where either you don't want to get out of bed, or you get back to your apartment and you don't want to study, or you're in the weight room and you don't want to keep pushing. What happens in your mind that helps you those times when you push through and you actually do the thing that's going to make you the best version of yourself? We call that winning the hour. When you say, okay, I have practice now, I know I'm feeling a little bit fatigued or whatever, but I'm going to give it everything right now. I'm going to give it my heart, my mind, everything. Or your studies. Can you tell us about what happens in your mind that allows you to push through those times when you don't want to do it?
Yeah, for sure. There was a story I heard once about a gold miner, and this gold miner, he lived on the East Coast, and he had heard about the gold rush in California. And so he sold all of his stuff and he traveled across the United States to California and in search of gold. And as he's searching for gold, he had read about nuggets of gold and read about how great the bounty of gold was in California. But when he got there and when he actually started looking, he became really, really frustrated and couldn't find these supposed nuggets of gold or this amount of gold that they had said in the newspapers. One day, as he was becoming more frustrated, he noticed that there was another gold miner who walked by who had a huge, little big pouch of gold in his pocket. The one gold miner just asked to see what was in the pouch because he had heard about these big nuggets and thought that the gold miner had a huge nugget of gold in his pocket. And upon further examination, he opened it up and realized that all the gold in the pouch were super tiny flecks. And I guess the reason that I really like that story is because a lot of times, especially in the monotony of the day-to-day here at the Naval Academy, I need to just look for little specks of gold. Like, not everything I do every single day is going to be a huge nugget, and I'm not just going to be, super lucky and find this huge sense of enjoyment, fulfillment from studying for a class for a couple hours, but just identifying and looking for little pieces of gold along the way, little flecks of gold, has really helped me to attack every hour, as you guys say, win the hour, or attack every task. And just look for the little thing, little wins.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. Just being a little bit better today than we were yesterday. Right. And then over time we become a much better version of ourselves. So Marcus, as it relates to winning the hour, that's a principle that you just alluded to. We talk about it, especially for athletes. Time management. We say go 16-0, and that's referring to the 16 hours that you're awake, that you approach each hour like it's the most important hour. And just like you would a season, right? Whoever's on your schedule that week's the most important, and you win that. And then you move on to the next. And then at the end of the year, maybe you went 16-0, maybe you went, 10-6, 8-8, whatever. But there's 8 hours of the day that have to be slept in order to go 16-0, at least 8 hours of the day. What's sleep like for you, Marcus? And how is that with everything you got going on? Do you sleep like a baby because of that, or is it hard to go to sleep?
No, I think that sleep is something I definitely struggle with quite a bit, mostly because there's a lot to do. I think that growing up, if you slept in, it was kind of viewed as, you're not really working that hard and those types of things. But I think that sleep is important. It's one thing I've been trying to do recently is commit to a time to go to sleep, almost in the same way you set your alarm for the morning, setting like an alarm for the evening. I think that's helped me a lot to get better sleep, get more sleep.
That's that you've probably noticed with everything you have to do at the Naval Academy. If you didn't get enough sleep, I'm sure that impacts your day, huh?
Yeah, it can get off the rails pretty quick.
Yeah. I'll ask one more, and then I'm going to kind of stop talking and let Shad fire some questions out at you. But again, on the win the hour in high school, looking back at high school, were there hours that you wish you could go back and approach differently? And if you were talking to a high school team, what might you tell them about the importance of taking advantage of being where your feet are, being in the moment? Whether that's math class or English or practice or at home, winning the hour that you're in. Do you have any advice or things you could give to them? And do you have any experiences of where you look back and realize you maybe could have done better with that principle?
Yeah, if I were to tell my younger self or tell a high school athlete about winning the hour, I would definitely say to get an app or get something where you can plan out your day. I think as a missionary, I learned the importance of that, and just the ability to look at your day and kind of look at what's going on. And maybe you have practice later on in the day, but you have all these free time in the morning. Well, what can I do in the morning, to win the hour so that I'm prepared for practice in the evening? Or what can I do in class, or what should I be doing in class to set me up for success further along the road? So, yeah, I would just say get in a habit as soon as possible of looking at your day and planning out what all you should do.
That goes to the word we say, Dustin, a lot, to be intentional, right?
Yeah.
It's like so many people, they just let life happen to them instead of steering their time toward those things that matter most to them. And I think all of us have experiences in our life where, for me, it was my mission as well, where you start to realize you have to plan your day and you're trying to be productive and you're trying to do good things. And you start to find those things that really do make a difference in the work, whatever work it is you're doing. And as you could identify those things, I love what you're saying. It reminds me when we had Stephen Covey on, Dustin, and he was saying that one of the most important things for productivity is taking a look at your week, like picking a night and just looking at the landscape of your week and then identifying that discretionary time where you could then be intentional. Say, okay, I have 2 or 3 hours right here. I am going to steer those 2 or 3 hours toward this thing that I'm trying to accomplish. And then if you did that and laid out your week and then woke up and looked, okay, here, I got a plan. I know what I'm going to do. Then all you have to do is be obedient to yourself. But so many people, I think, just wake up and find themselves in a moment of free time and think, okay, what am I going to do? And so often, like, this is what ends up, winning the day. And then they lose the hour. And so,
Yeah.
I love that thought, Marcus.
Can I tell you something that I just heard last week on this Kobe Bryant video of, I follow a lot of stuff about Kobe Bryant. I loved his work ethic, but in one interview, he talked about planning his day out, what time he'd wake up, what he would do. And he said that he wouldn't negotiate with himself. And I love that because, and I took it as meaning this, Marcus, we've talked before about the old Indian or Native American chief Sitting Bull who said that there's two dogs inside of every man, and the one that man becomes, the one that becomes the alpha dog, is the one that we feed the most. So there's the version of ourselves that wants to sit down and be lazy all day and watch TV and listen to music and hang out, and then there's the version of us that wants to go and get stuff done and do stuff and work, right? And the one that we become is the one that we give the most attention to. That becomes the alpha dog. And so in this case of Kobe Bryant, he said, I don't negotiate with myself. And I believe he means he doesn't negotiate with the other dog. Once he said, once I decide I'm waking up at this time and I'm getting this many shots in and I'm doing this workout and I'm eating this diet today, end of story. Like, I committed to it 100%. I don't negotiate with myself, because we're pretty good at negotiating with ourselves and talking ourselves out of the New Year's resolution, right? This one time, or I'll go back to it tomorrow, whatever. And, Marcus, in the military, you can't negotiate with yourself, because it's absolutely not. I mean, it's not even, you can't, you'd be kicked out, right? There's a level of intensity there and of expectation to be on time to things and to be present, to be ready. Was that something that you can speak to, or something that you learned that you feel like was worth some of the pain and sorrow you've gone through adjusting to being at the Naval Academy?
Yeah, I'm definitely thankful for all the things I've learned. And yeah, I think football, along with the military, has taught me just the importance of being punctual to things. And also, one thing I notice is as you're talking about not negotiating with yourself, or kind of listening to that inner voice that tells you what you should be doing, is you learn to trust yourself. And as much as you want other people to trust you in certain situations, it's really important that you trust yourself to do those things. I think the more often, when you follow your daily plan, when you show up to the meeting on time, when you get the shots that you need to get in, that you start to build trust in yourself and build momentum that leads over to lots of success.
Yeah.
So I have a question about Army people. No, one of my favorite games of the year, Marcus, is the Army Navy game. All the regular season is done. It's kind of that almost the introduction to bowl season of college football. But this year I was especially moved as I watched everyone there, all the cadets and all the midshipmen there dressed in their military uniforms, and the national anthem is being sung. And there's this like healthy hatred for one another, right? Where it's like, there's probably no one else in the world that you would rather beat, or no other game that you would rather win than that Army Navy game. Yet you fast forward a couple of months and those crews are going to be working together to defend our country. And so it seems like we call it competing without contempt, competing without hatred. And I just love that game because there's this unified cause, right? Where we're going to work together in our lives to defend this country. But right now we're going to try to destroy one another on the field. And that's what we try to teach. The compete part, we often put in capitals, like you compete, like you destroy people on the field, but it doesn't have to have, you don't have to have hate in your heart for those people. They are so much like you. And I don't know if there's another group of athletes more like the Naval Academy than the Army, right? And can you just teach us what you've learned from that dynamic, that very unique dynamic about that principle of competing like crazy, but without hatred for your opponent, and realizing you have a lot in common with them?
Yeah, here at the Naval Academy, in our weight room, you see it everywhere. It's go Navy, beat Army. And I think a lot of times that message can definitely be interpreted as having hatred towards the opponent, or hatred toward those guys. But I think one thing that we focus on as a team is having a love for the people in the room, like having a love for your teammate, right? And playing not so much because you hate the other guy and you don't like them, but because of the love you have for your brothers on your sideline. And I think that as you mentioned, after the Army Navy game is over, we're going to work with those guys. And in essence, they become part of the same team and we become part of the same team. And it just is a good principle to play for love for your brothers and for the ones that are with you rather than for hatred of somebody else or because you don't like something else.
Yeah, Dustin shaking his head.
You want to take that one, Chad?
Yeah, every presentation we do, we quote G.K. Chesterton. You've probably heard this quote, but said this during one of the world wars. He's an English philosopher, and he said, "The true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what's behind him." And we often talk about how love is a way better fuel than hate. Hate, it just seems like it's a fast burning but unsustainable fuel to try to motivate yourself with, because if you always have to find something to hate in order to get yourself up for a game or for a moment, that's a horrible way to look at life. If you're just looking around trying to find something you hate enough to motivate yourself versus looking around and finding something that you love so much that becomes your fuel. Whether in your case it's your teammates, it's the Naval Academy, it's your father and your mother and your family and your faith. That is so much more motivating to a person in life than having to look around and constantly find something they hate bad enough to work hard. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that you mentioned it twice there. Did you know about that quote, or have you heard that before, or did you just say that out of?
Yes, I've heard it before. We have in the naval inside of Bancroft Hall, they have these thing called boards where it's basically a bulletin board, and they decorate them with quotes and those types of things. So I've seen that's a pretty prevalent quote here at the Naval Academy. Is for loving.
Can I fire a couple questions at you, Marcus? I just thought of. I'm gonna throw and it might be kind of on the spot, so you don't have to have the perfect answer. But we've done this before, a version of this before with people. I'm gonna ask you 4 or 5 people, and I want you to tell me something that you feel like they've taught you to be better, an example or something, a lesson that they've taught you by watching them, or that you've learned from them, or an experience. Okay, so I'm going to start with your dad. We know your dad. What has your dad taught you that's helped you be who you are today?
I think my dad has taught me a lot about belief and believing in yourself. He loves to say that, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I think that's something that I love that he's taught me.
Yeah. Your dad was that way, by the way, as a player. He wasn't always the biggest, but he was probably the leader, I would say, on the year that we only played 1 year together. But I would look at Gary as probably the tip of the sword, your dad on our team, his leadership qualities. And he was just always on. You didn't, right, Chad? You didn't have many off days from Gary.
Nope. Broke his leg. Remember last game of the season, Dustin?
Yeah.
Goes into the fence, slides, and played center field for us and broke his leg and limps in, finishes the game, his last game of the season. Then we find out that he played a number of innings with the broken leg.
Yeah.
That kind of epitomizes Gary Bleazard right there. But he was the leader of the leaders.
And when you hear that his offspring would be at the Naval Academy, it kind of makes sense.
I know. Dustin and I are the most unshocked people in the world, Marcus, that you are where you are, knowing your dad.
What about your mom, Marcus? What's your mom taught you?
I think my mom has taught me a lot about unselfish care and love. There were a lot of mornings. I think so in Georgia, we had early morning seminary, and I don't know if I've ever had a morning where I didn't have breakfast made for me before I went to seminary. And so I think that has just been a huge testament to the love that she showed me. And she started doing this thing where, every time I hug her before I say goodbye, I have to hug her for 8 seconds because it's medically proven for some reason to help or something like that. So yeah, I just learned from my mom how to be unselfish and loving.
How many times in the Naval Academy did you long for one of those? I just need an 8-second hug from my mom right now during plebe. I just need a hug.
Yeah, during the plebe summit.
What about your high school coach?
My high school coach, we had is Coach Matt Dickman. He was there for a while as I was growing up in the youth program through elementary school, middle school. And the main thing that he taught me was being uncommon. We had a quote about being uncommon and doing the uncommon thing in the face of adversity, and doing the extra reps, being uncommon.
That's good. Your college coach,
Position coach or head coach?
You've had 2 head coaches, and how many position coaches since you've been there?
2 and 2.
Okay. Just pick a coach that's really had an impact on you, and what was that for? What was it that he impacted you with?
I think that my coach right now, Coach Volker, has just taught me a lot about enthusiasm for the game of football and enthusiasm for life. And I think a lot of times, at least for me, sometimes I get fired up on the field, and it's hard for me to express that same emotion off the field. And I feel like my linebacker coach, Coach Volker, is great at doing that. He's enthusiastic on the field, off the field, all the time. So I love that about him.
Linebackers are crazy suckers, Marcus. Like there's might not be a position that I, as a head coach, am looking for more of the personality to dictate whether or not he can play that position. Quarterback but linebacker is, you might say you play linebacker, but I got to see a little bit of crazy in you. Like you got to have 2% like crazy to play linebacker. Like you got to be a dude that if you got challenged to light your eyebrows on fire, you'd be like, sure, why not? Like, I'm nuts, right? Like, let's do it. Like, you got to have some crazy in you. So talking to you here, Marcus, you're all dressed up and you're so proper and you're, yes, sir. But I know on the field, you have a little bit of crazy in you, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I just let myself loose on the field. It's,
yeah,
it's the best
that's
part.
Awesome. You keep your cards close to you. You're this calm, quiet, a humble dude off the field, but I know on the field you let crazy Marcus go, and that dude's a wrecking machine, man. I've seen you play, so I know that's the case. So, what did your mission teach you? I mean, being away, for people who aren't members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they probably know that, a lot of times the 18, 19, when your dad and Chad and we go on these 2-year missions. And whether you believe in what we believe in or not, it's the fact that you do it. I have a son in Australia right now. Chad has a daughter in the Philippines. It's what they do is good, that they're trying to help people and do good things. And it's hard. It's difficult to leave your home for 2 years and be trying to help other people every day. So what did that teach you? What's something? I know there's a lot, there's a million things, but one thing that came out of being a missionary that you would say, man, I really am better at this because I was a missionary?
I'm just kind of going back to the identity part. We were talking about identity a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
I think that coming out of high school, I had kind of made that my identity, right? Being a football player. And then being able to take a 2-year break from it has allowed me to recenter my identity on Jesus Christ and the relationship I have with him. So, rather than my identity being based off of a good practice or a bad practice, it's based on Jesus Christ and my relationship with him. So that's probably the main thing I learned on my mission.
That's awesome. That's great. And Marcus, you're from a coach, from a dad, and also just as an American. Like, thank you for everything you do, man. We need more young men like you in our country to lead our country, to defend our country, to marry the daughters of dads like Shad and me, and just to see what I did there, Marcus, and just to be good. I tell my football players all the time to be a real man, and we talk about what a real man is. And you seem like the type of kid that's a real man to me, that understands what that means, and we need more dudes like you. So thank you for all you do. Chad, I'll give you the final word, but Marcus, sincerely from me, thank you, and thank you for joining in our podcast and giving us some insights.
Thank you, Dustin.
Dustin, my thoughts went the same. I've often thought and taught in this program, we try to teach athletes to use their sport light, is what we call it, that extra attention that comes to them from being athletes, from being some of the biggest, strongest, fastest, to lift and help others. And those like yourself who use your strength, your abilities, everything that you've been given to make others feel safe instead of scared, to protect instead of persecute. It's super admirable. And you and all the midshipmen that are with you and all those that are like you, it's just always an honor for us to talk with you, because you are the best of the best, and we all owe a debt of gratitude for the freedoms that you maintain and provide. I just want to say thank you as well, and we love you. We love your dad. We feel like we've known you for a long, long time and watched your whole development, and it's fun to see you where you're at right now. And so congratulations. That has come by living the principles we've talked today, and we just hope that you'll keep it up, and we just appreciate so much you carving out this time in your busy schedule to be with us today. So thank you, Marcus. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, thank you for having me on. And what can we do to help you guys out with your program? What can I do to help you all?
Well, this is great. And there might be some other things that we'll hit you up on, Marcus. In fact, we'll maybe talk off air about that, because there might be some things that you can do to help us. But right now, you got to go hit the weights, because you guys got to beat Notre Dame next year. Dang it.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yeah, we got to get on.
You beat Army every year. You beat Army all the time. You got to beat Notre Dame now.
Yeah, we got to get in the CFP or something.
There you go. There you go. Well, hey, everybody, thank you for joining the Especially for Athletes podcast. Keep your eyes up and do the work.
Thank you for joining the Especially for Athletes podcast. To learn more about Especially for Athletes organization, get a copy of our book, The Sportlight, or to bring our program to your team, school, business, or organization, visit us at especiallyforathletes.org.